You're listening to the Fayetteville 411 podcast, produced by the City of Fayetteville, where you will get information about city government and the programs and services we provide. You'll get topics of interest and an inside look into the various departments that help keep our city moving. I'm John Salling.
And I'm Sherri Kropp. The City of Fayetteville has launched a new Safe Streets initiative that will focus on reducing traffic fatalities and serious injury across the city, and we're going to talk about that today. Joining us to talk about it is Brian McGill. He's the Assistant Public Services Director for Traffic Services, and we're also joined by Chandler Hagen, who is a transportation planner. Thank you both for joining us today.
No, I'm happy to be here. I'm always excited to be able to talk about safety and the projects that we have going on around the city.
Let's talk about what the purpose and the goal of this initiative is.
So right out the gate, I do want to state by saying that the majority of crashes are caused because of something that is not tied to the roadway. So whether it be driver behavior or, say, an animal jumping into the road or a medical condition. But whenever it does come to that, we find that the majority of those crashes are because of driver behavior, not necessarily, a medical condition or an animal jumping in or hydroplaning on the road. So just want to point out, it's not something where we look at it as accidents, it's more of crashes, because accidents are inevitable. Crashes, they can be prevented. But for Safe Streets for All, it's what we consider to be a comprehensive safety action plan. And it is partly funded by the federal government, and we are essentially targeting where severe and fatal injury crashes occur. And of those locations, we're trying to identify what we can do to try and prevent future crashes from seriously maiming or taking somebody's life.
This comprehensive safety action plan identified 5 primary goals. Can you tell me some about what those are?
Yes. So the overall goal is to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes by 25% over the next 5 years. And then every 5 years after that, stick with 25% reduction every 5 years. And then we want to do that by promoting data-driven decision-making and transparent reporting. And we want to have engage with the community engagement, and we want to create a culture of safety. And then also look to enhance roadway safety infrastructure projects. So that's back to those engineering countermeasures.
And I was reading a statistic that you have here. 8% of road miles, only 8% of the road miles account for 76% of fatal and serious injury.
Yes, that's true. And the first step of the safety action plan was to take the data-driven decision-making by using crash data and determining where those accidents are happening and how they're happening. It is a very small percentage of roadways that are affected, that are constituting the majority of our crashes.
And it sort of makes sense. Whenever you look at the city of Fayetteville, we have over 700 miles of road that we're maintaining. Whenever you actually start digging into the weeds, though, a good majority of that is going to be your neighborhood roads where the speeds are lower and kids are running around playing, cars are parked on the side of the road. Compare that to, say, something like Rayford Road or Skybow Road. Everybody drives down it, but not everybody is going to be driving down the back of your neighborhood. And so whenever you say that a good majority of crashes are occurring on a small section of road, it's going to be the ones that are more traveled.
And so we talk about a lot of these crashes being driver behavior and not because of the roadway. So what kind of things go into a plan to try and prevent that?
Well, so driver behavior like speeding, that is something that the driver decides to do, but there's things that you can do to slow cars down with the design of the roadway. So like road diets and traffic calming, medians, things like that. So if you're looking to slow people down, there's definitely ways we can do that in the design to prevent that decision from being made.
And when you say road diets?
What
is that to the normal person?
To the normal person, that means making it skinnier.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
making the lanes narrower. And yeah, that's a road diet, basically.
Okay.
Nothing is off the table. If an intersection needs traffic signal, let's look at traffic signals. If a corridor needs to have the concrete median that I know absolutely everybody loves and nobody ever complains about, then that is also an option. I don't know where this would rank, but if a traffic signal needs to be turned into an interchange, then I wouldn't take that off the table. There's nothing that is off the table whenever it comes to what this plan can be looking at, because at the end of the day, we are more focused on safety, not necessarily on what it might cost. In addition to essentially looking at engineering countermeasures, we're also looking at ways that we can partner with the community to help perform better education, whether it's targeting driver education services or going out into large meeting areas like the Dogwood Festival or Fayetteville Marksman Game or Fayetteville Woodpeckers, going out there and trying to educate people and saying, hey, speeding costs lives, running red lights costs lives, and the 1 or 2 minutes that you might save from speeding for an hour, is that necessarily putting the loved ones that you have at risk? Is that something that you want to put everybody else at risk for? That's why we say we want to have people slow down. And that's why it's not necessarily all engineering. It's also public engagement.
What are some of the challenges you're seeing on the Fayetteville roads?
Speeding, distracted driving, those are the two largest contributors.
And if you pay attention to Facebook, it's red light running. Red light running is also a major factor, and I've seen my share of red light runners as well. There have been a handful of cases where the crashes where people run red lights and they're speeding, they do make the paper, they do catch council's attention, but they catch staff's attention too, and we take note of that. And that's we don't wait for those things to happen, but that is something that we take into consideration whenever we're reviewing what we can do to prevent things like this from happening. Two things I've seen make an impact. The first one, I want to give 100% credit over to Chief Bryan, who had instituted or implemented more policing procedures. And I say that because I'm not well versed inside of what the police do, but I do see them on Rayford Road whenever I'm going through in the morning and the school lights are flashing. And for that, that right there is something that I've seen the police been very, very helpful with in trying to get people to slow down, get people to obey the law. But then also I've seen whenever the police cars aren't sitting there, people are still slowing down. And it's that type of behavior of, I've seen police sit here on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and, well, it's Tuesday, I don't know if they're going to be there, I'm going to slow down anyways. That's the first part. The second part is something that I'm encouraging everybody whenever I go out to community meetings or whether I just have any opportunity to speak is if you see something wrong, call it out. Nobody likes to be called out, and nobody likes to be called out in front of other people. And so what I mean by that is whenever I'm riding with friends, if they're the one that is driving and they start picking up a phone and start texting and stuff, I'll call them out, because letting your friends start doing the reckless behavior on the road, that is sort of the gateway to the things that we're seeing on today's roads.
And so when we're talking about Fayetteville, why do we need this plan?
Well, we are experiencing an increasing number of serious injury crashes and fatal crashes every year. So we definitely need to address this and change this trend and get it reduced. We want to see the trend line going down, not going up, as it's been going up for the past. Really, it continues to increase as population continues to increase, but even the percentages continue to increase. So we just want to see a change in that trend.
Sure.
So what types of things are you doing? Are you gathering feedback from residents, from businesses? How are you getting information to help this initiative move forward?
So the first step was a data step, was to just identify where these crashes are occurring based on their severity. But now that we have that data, we're taking it out to the public. So yes, to get that public engagement, we are doing public feedback sessions, open houses.
And then in addition to that, we also have two separate community groups. The first one is essentially the nonprofits and the people that are more connected to the outreach communities and pedestrian groups, running groups, basically sort of the center of your community where they all congregate. And we are inviting them in as a targeted group. And then the second one is a stakeholder group. People who sit at the top of organizations that deal with things that are tangentially related to road safety. So something like the Fort Bragg MPs or Cumberland County Health Services, or essentially things like that, where they work inside of the realm, but they're not targeting the road. They're targeting on the driver behavior, the driver interactions, what happens after a crash, the after crash care, things of that nature. And so we're trying to throw a wide net to do as much as we can to help address safety.
And we also have a survey that we're promoting and distributing. So we have a public survey that's gone out, and that will be available for the remainder of the month.
And we'll make sure we share that information at the end of the podcast so people can go and take that survey. And Brian, I'm glad that you mentioned bicyclists, because that is an issue too. I mean, we want to make it safe for everybody, not just people that are driving on the roads, but pedestrians and bicyclists and all of those.
Yes, and something that we've seen inside of the industry is that as vehicles have gotten safer and the occupants that are involved in crashes inside the vehicle, they tend to survive more and more frequently than they did, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. We're seeing that because of how vehicles are being designed, how much they weigh, how high they are up off the road, where their front bumpers and their front grills are, that we're seeing that pedestrians that are involved in crashes and bicyclists that are involved in crashes, that they're becoming more severely injured, more times it results in a fatality, and that's because of the car design. And it's not something where we're going to try and go talk to Ford and say, redesign your trucks, but it is something where the industry is kind of grappling with that, where we might be seeing vehicles being safer inside, but on the outside, they are becoming more dangerous. And
as far as what we're going to do, how will this plan be used to make decisions for our roads?
So it identifies the roads that we want to focus on, and then it does go into detailed countermeasures. The plan will go into that and make specific recommendations for different roadway types and how to address that. And so then we'll kind of have a priority list of where we want to target, and that will be the first step of the plan.
An overall arching idea here is whenever this is brought eventually to council for their adoption, we are then going to be taking, assuming that it is successfully adopted, that we're going to take the projects that are recommended from this, and they're going to be placed into our CIP and funded for future projects, future construction.
So we do want to mention that this project and initiative falls right in line with one of City Council's priorities for transportation and community safety.
Yes. So policy one is safe and secure community. And of that, I also know, while it doesn't necessarily fall inside of that category all the time, sitting over here in the transportation sector, I think of sidewalks, bike lanes, road conditioning. Yes, the connectivity. I think of all that, not only in connectivity, but also safety. Whenever a pedestrian doesn't have to walk in the street, they can walk out of the street on a sidewalk or a multi-use path, then that is something that ties back into the council directive of trying to provide a safe community for people to be able to get around the community.
And as we're kind of talking about that, trying to get the community involved, we're taking all these steps like the survey, like all of these different groups that we're talking about getting input from. What's the importance of having the community so involved in this process?
Well, you want them to be invested, so you want them to have had a chance to share what their concerns are and their locations, some things that the data might not be showing, but the community is aware of. And so we want to just know that we have their investment and we have their participation and we have that data. And
the City of Fayetteville, we can't be everywhere every day 100% of the time. So we rely on the community to be able to point out the things that our data is not showing. Things of like near-miss crashes or near misses. Whenever we see, a school bus stop is right outside my front door and people are passing the bus every single time. That's something where we rely on the community to inform us, saying, hey, there's a lot of kids playing in this neighborhood, and we also have a lot of speeders on the street adjacent to it. And it's stuff like that that'll kind of focus our attention to areas to try and prevent future incidents from occurring.
How closely do you work with NCDOT? So if there's an intersection and there's multiple crashes at that intersection that maybe doesn't have stoplights or something like that, how is that determined?
Well, NCDOT is involved. They are part of our stakeholder group. And then they are also involved in a MPO plan. They're actually funding an MPO plan for the Fayetteville MPO area. So they're really focusing on safety too, and we're noticing a transition towards a more safety-focused approach from NCDOT. So they are partners in this.
And real quick, that acronym NPO.
Oh, Metropolitan Planning Organization.
And then with DOT, it is something where even outside of this project, we coordinate with them every opportunity and every chance that we get. Whenever they have projects going on, like the Rafer Road Widening Project, I can't remember the acronym of it, but it is the city came in and provided funds and agreements to eventually get sidewalk installed where there is no sidewalk today. And so it's things like that where the city and the state, they work together to advance safe interest. In addition to that, there are also programs internally that are on a smaller scale. They don't look at the entire city, or let me rephrase, they don't evaluate the entire city, but they bring hotspots and flashpoints from the community into sort of a round table of all the stakeholders from the city and the state, and they say, hey, we received 14 resident requests to have crosswalks on Morganton Road going over to the school. What can we do to make this happen? And that's whenever we all start pitching in our ideas and we work to get those type of requests addressed. And that goes through the NCDOT coordination that we have practically every day. Safe Streets for All is going to be evaluating all public roads and intersections in the city limits. And so NCDOT, city, doesn't matter who's responsible for it, it is going to be evaluated.
And so is the Safe Streets for All, is that a national initiative?
It is. It's a federal program.
Mm-hmm.
And for collecting that community input that we talked about, where can people go?
To fayetteville.nc.gov/CSAP.
I want to thank you both for coming on the podcast today to talk about this new initiative, and our hope is that you'll get a lot of feedback from these different groups that are involved and from the residents. And one more time, what is that web address where they can go and take the survey?
It's fayetteville.nc.gov/CSAP.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. That wraps it up for this episode of the Fayetteville 411. The Fayetteville 411 is one of several podcasts that the city produces for our podcast channel, Radio Fayetteville. Be sure to subscribe to Radio Fayetteville, available on most of your favorite podcast streaming platforms.
You can also listen to every podcast the Radio Fayetteville has to offer by downloading the Fay TV streaming app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV. You can view all of our video content by visiting faytv.net. To get information about city services, visit fayetteville.nc.gov. Thank you for joining us. And thank you guys again.
Hello, I'm Eric Hurley with Fayetteville Police Department Traffic Unit. We don't write tickets to raise money, we write tickets to change behavior. Speed was the primary factor in more than 60% of the 28 fatal crashes we investigated last year. Every stop we make might be the one that prevents the next death. I'd rather give you a citation than tell your loved one you're never coming home.
I'm Detective Deal with the Fayetteville Police Department's Traffic Unit. As a crash reconstructionist, I don't guess what happened, I prove it. We measure, photograph, and digitally rebuild each fatal scene millisecond by millisecond. Speed is the most common factor we find in deadly crashes. I've seen cars split in half just because someone was in a hurry. These aren't freak accidents, they're choices, and every choice has a consequence.
If you see blue lights in 2026, expect a citation.
If we see this scene again, someone didn't listen. Your speed, your choice, your consequence.
Speed kills, respect the limit.